And I hated for the sun to come up, and I hated for the sun to go down. I had nothing to live for. I wanted to die, but I'd pray, and just my faith and my family, those girls and mother, brought me through.
What created this kind of pain for Marilyn Motts? Most days you'll find her watering the flowers outside her home in Habersham County in northeast Georgia. She and her husband Aubrey have been married for 23 years. Today they are retired and live comfortably along the banks of the Sequoia River. On the surface, Marilyn has what we all hope for, a happy, secure life with someone she loves. So what haunts her from her past? What causes her to still have nightmares?
It started when I was about 10 years old, just as I was filling out as a young lady. And it started as fondling in the bed, and I'll never forget the first time he touched me. And I knew it was wrong, and I couldn't believe that he was doing this, and I turned over and he did it again. And I can't remember how that night ended, but that was the beginning.
It was the beginning of a nightmare of child sexual abuse for an innocent 10-year-old girl by her father.
He would actually come in to the house and send the other children to do something, call me into one of the bedrooms, push me up against the wall, pull up my clothes, and actually penetrate. And I was crying, and not loud. I couldn't cry out loud, but I cried and pushed him away and begged him, please, Daddy, please don't do this. And he never paid me any attention, and he did it for years and years and years.
Marilyn's story of child abuse never happens in our neighborhood. It never happens in our town. It never happens to anyone we know. That may be what the people of Habersham County think. I mean, how could it be? Just take a look. Beautiful rolling pastures, new homes in safe neighborhoods, modern schools, small town squares where most people know each other. Habersham County is the best of America, but it's also no different. Last year, there were over 400,000 substantiated cases of child abuse in the United States. There were over 15,000 cases in Georgia, and there were nearly 500 cases in Habersham County. These numbers are the substantiated cases. There are estimates of 3 times that many unreported cases.
Abuse is a vicious cycle, just like poverty. Children are being abused every day.
Shirley Meeks is a retired educator, former teacher, and principal. For years, she has worked with Prevent Child Abuse Habersham. She says many folks think child abuse only affects the poor, criminals, or immigrants, and everyone tends to slough it off.
It is serious, much more than people know, I believe. But I think that attitude causes people to tend to not want to be involved. Number one, they don't know what to do. Number two, they don't understand how rampant it is. And number three, they just think it's somebody else's problem.
For Marilyn, it was sexual abuse and the fear of physical abuse. For other kids, now adults, it was the abuse of their mother that came with constant threats and fear for them.
Unless you were my next door neighbors on either side, the facade that we put forward as a family, no one knew what was going on in that house.
Sherry Donnelly is a married mother of 2 teenagers. She is a successful commercial florist in Clarksville. Her father was an alcoholic and, as she put it, a mean drunk. Every night,
you know, we would be up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, listening to the slaps and the thuds and the breaking of the lamp.
Between them?
Mm-hmm. We would huddle together in a bedroom and try and figure out what was going on. If someone was extremely hurt, did we need to finally take that courage and go out the door and try and do something?
The threats and abuse continued for years. Finally, her parents would get a divorce.
There was a point where when you talk about verbal abuse, there was a point that came that my dad said very vocally and in front of us that he did not want a divorce from my mother. He wanted a divorce from us.
How did that make you feel?
Awful. We were the problem. And we did everything we could to be good and perfect and get it right every time. And
it's hard to hear the pain in Sherry's memories. It's even harder to hear it from children. Holly McShane knows this story all too well. She is an elementary school counselor, and as much as anything, Holly listens. She looks for signs of abuse, whether it is neglect, verbal, physical, or sexual, because kids don't often come right out and say what's going on. Holly sees the clues in their words, their eyes, and often in a most unlikely place, their artwork. She remembers asking a young boy to draw an image of his family and include himself in the picture.
When a child is finished with their artwork, the first thing I ask them to do is to explain it to me. And he pointed out that the brown figure was his mother's boyfriend. And I said, but who is this person in the middle? He said that was what he thought he looked like, and that's how he felt. And when I asked what was going on with the blood running from the eyes, he says, well, that's because I cry all the time. And I said, well, where is all this pain coming from? And he just sort of pointed to the brown figure, and he said, you know, that's Mom's boyfriend. He hates having us around. And the child had 2 other siblings in the house at the time.
And another child, another drawing that speaks for itself.
I had always suspected that there were other things based on his behavior, but I didn't have any concrete evidence, so to speak, to work with. And when I questioned him, he still would not articulate the right legal words to make the moves that I wanted to make to protect him about what was happening and who was hurting him. But it was just that this is how my body feels, it hurts all the time. But shortly after that, the mother moved them to another county. And I don't know if he's ever gotten any healing, and I don't know what kind of person he's going to grow up to be. And there's so many children out there like him. They just come and go.
In 1992, a number of Habersham citizens came together and said something had to be done. It was the beginning of Prevent Child Abuse Habersham. The organization began to grow and succeed under the leadership of Janice Stapleton, who secured their first state grant. She knew, and the leaders today know, that to make a difference, they have to break the cycle of abuse that repeats itself generation to generation. It begins here at the Habersham Medical Center.
Here's a little quiz for testing yourself for postpartum depression.
Volunteer Kathy Swick is meeting with 20-year-old Candy Dill, who just had her first child, Cooper. Every single new parent, like Candy, is introduced to the First Steps program while they are in the hospital. Prevent Child Abuse Habersham volunteers offer parent education, provide links to community resources, and offer intensive long-term phone support for any parent who wants it. Many new parents don't know what to expect and often lose their patience with a new child when they get home and they're on their own. It can be the seeds of child abuse, but most times it can be prevented with education.
Cómetelo, ponlo en tu boca. Put it in your mouth. Yes, very cute.
Some new parents volunteer for an in-home education program called Parents as Teachers. Trained staff professionals meet in the home with the new parent and their child during the early development years, usually from birth to age 5.
So the next time I come back, I want to see how much she can take out and how much she can put in. See,
Christina Davis has spent her entire career teaching young adults how to be better parents, how to understand the development of their child, and how to be patient.
If the mother can feel confident in herself that I can do this, especially these young mothers, they panic. And it only takes a moment to abuse your child, shaking them because you want them to be quiet. That's child abuse, and that affects the brain. And what we do, what I've done, the very first time that I visit with them, we have a video that talks about shaken baby syndrome. And they just kind of look stunned. They didn't realize that it actually affects the brain. It can affect them for life. I will be back to see you. See you later.
She's there for these families, and they know that, and they trust her we can't really begin to make a difference till we have built that relationship with our families and that they trust us and they know that we are sincerely there to help them in any way that we possibly can. And that's what Christina does on a daily basis.
We can choose to be passionate about creating safe environments.
And finally, Prevent Child Abuse Habersham educates the community with their Stewards of Children program. Here, average citizens learn what they can do, what to look for, what to do if you suspect child abuse, and how to get over the fear of stepping forward.
Because the worst thing that we can do is just to not be in the right moment for that child. We have to step out of that situation, and our emotions need to all be about what can I do to help this child.
People need to feel empowered. They don't know what to do. They're worried they'll do the wrong thing. They're worried they'll get involved and get in trouble or overstep their bounds. None of that matters. This program will help them understand that more clearly than anything I've ever seen before.
Several times a day, trains pass through the town of Cornelia. The trains go right past the old depot and right past some symbols of what this county hopes to create: happy, healthy children having fun. These bronze statues remind us of how important it is to protect our kids.
So you can use those and not even have to write things down.
And when we see Kathy Swick reaching out to a new mom, and Christina Davis dropping by to check on Tanya and her one-year-old daughter Yareli, and Carol James taking time to answer questions from Jacqueline Johnson, whom she has helped for years.
Do you ever worry that somebody might get mad at you if you tell, if you're worried about somebody?
And Holly McShane talking to kids at a local school. We realize how many lives are touched every day by Prevent Child Abuse Habersham.
And I just think if you've ever held a hurting child in your hand, or seen an adult person that you love disclose their story when you had no idea that they had lived with that all their years, you're just a changed person after that.
But no one understands more what needs to be done than Marilyn Motts. She knows how lucky she is. She survived, and she hopes her story makes a difference.
If I feel like even what I'm doing today would help one child, would help one parent, you know, find one child and prevent child abuse, it would be so worth it if it was just one child saved. Every effort would be worth it.
If you need help or know someone who does, or want to help, either way, please contact Prevent Child Abuse Habersham.